How do you have like a constant pump? How do you have veins in your arms when you're not eating any carbs? I get asked this question all the time.
Well, number one, carbohydrate is for the weak. Number two, the carbohydrate is not necessary. The carbohydrate is something that can be used as a tool. Proper fats, proper protein levels, you get in great shape. Are you going to be a little depleted? Possibly, yes. But are you training to have a good pump at the gym, or are you training to get jacked?
How many carbohydrates should you eat a day in order to not die? Let's see what the National Academy of Science and the Institute of Medicine have to say about this. The lower limit of dietary carbohydrate compatible with life apparently is 0, provided that adequate amounts of protein and fat are consumed. There are traditional populations that ingested a high-fat, high-protein diet containing only a minimal amount of carbohydrate for extended periods of time, and in some cases, for a lifetime after infancy. There was no apparent effect on health or longevity. So the next time a doctor or a dietitian tells you you need to eat 120 grams of carbohydrate a day to feed your brain, you can tell them they're full of shit.
You're going to find a lot of people who promote carnivore-like animal-based diets say that we don't have an essential need for carbohydrates. You'll find quite a lot of stories online that say that eating any carbohydrates gives them blood sugar swings, brain fog, gas, and bloating, etc. We're not invalidating their experiences, but when these people look to the macronutrients and call them useless, does it hold much water? Hey, this is Josh from Vitality Maximize, and today we're going to unpack this common rhetoric that carbohydrates are not essential. Before we begin, if you've been enjoying and viewing our content for some time, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those bell notifications on YouTube and Odyssey. Back to carbohydrates. To unpack this reasoning, carbohydrates, in the textbooks, do state that they're not essential because we have no physiological need for them. They also do say that there are 9 essential amino acids and essential fatty acids like the omega-3s that we cannot manufacture. We can typically manufacture carbohydrates from proteins and to a lesser extent fats. This is done by a process called gluconeogenesis, and that takes place in the liver. Interestingly, a man who I respect, Chris Masterjohn, disagrees with the carnivore-like proponents that say that there's no physiological need for carbohydrates. A few months ago, he made content on Gary Brecka's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, talking about how he fixed Dana White's health. If you are interested in that podcast episode between Gary Brecka and Joe Rogan, it is in the show notes. To summarize what Chris Masterjohn has said in response to Gary Brecka on carbohydrates, he mentioned that glucose is the main source of a methylfolate. The methyl group of methylfolate. Carbohydrates helps people make tryptophan so that the body can rest and sleep. Whether you agree with him or not, you can always refer to a biochemistry textbook to verify his statements. To learn more about the reasoning and his rationale regarding his disagreement with Gary Brecka, I left a video below to learn and research further. To summarize some of the other things he has said about carbohydrates over the years, which you can verify by getting a physiology and a biochemistry textbook, I'll state 5. First one is that DNA and RNA, which has to do with our genes, contain deoxyribose and ribose, both of which are sugars. Our joints contain something called proteoglycans, which are a combination of glucose and proteins. 3. Carbohydrates require less water and less CO2 than fat metabolism. 4. Carbohydrates generate more carbon dioxide per unit than fat. CO2 can activate vitamin K dependent proteins, which is important for calcium metabolism and bone remodeling. 5. Not eating carbohydrates forces the liver to make glucose and proteins via gluconeogenesis through the action of cortisol. And cortisol breaks down fatty acids from the adipose tissue, which can impair the thyroid hormone from carrying out its functions. If you are open to the perspectives on Chris Masterjohn on carbohydrates, you can check out chrismasterjohnphd.com. Links to his work in the show notes. My thoughts on this matter is that saying that carbohydrates are not essential lack nuance and has a total disregard for biochemical individuality. For starters, gluconeogenesis relies on a healthy liver to extract glucose from amino acids and fatty acids. Typical signs of a stressed liver can be elevated liver enzymes on a blood test. On a hair analysis, we might see a low sodium-potassium ratio. Another angle of this sheer lack of nuance and lack of biochemical individuality from these personalities are the metabolic states different people are in. All human beings make or generate energy via 3 pathways. One is the phosphocreatine ATP pathway. The second is the glycolysis pathway through the cytosol, and the last one is the Krebs cycle pathway in the mitochondria. The critical difference between someone with a slower metabolic rate and the other with a faster metabolic rate is that the slower metabolic rate individual is inefficient in generating energy from the cytosol, and the other one is. If one cannot generate enough energy from the cytosol through the phosphocreatine ATP pathway nor glycolysis, you can forget about optimizing energy production in the mitochondria. What this also means is that faster metabolic rates can digest carbs very quickly, while the slower metabolic types not much so. Hence, if you give a much slower metabolic type more heavy foods and fats like butter, fatty red meat, dark meat, poultry with the skin on, and lots of eggs, they are likely not to digest and absorb the nutrients in the food to generate optimal energy. There was this individual as of recent his name is concealed, that was on a carnivore diet for about 2 years. At first, he said that this diet, the carnivore diet, helped him tremendously from type 2 diabetes to psoriasis, I butchered the pronunciation, pulmonary embolism, but certain other symptoms that he has had issues with like memory issues, blurry vision, and low mood are not resolved. He shared his hair analysis report on a group chat that I am in, and what was important was that he was a slow metabolizer, so he had a slow metabolic rate, evidenced by a high calcium to potassium ratio and a low sodium to magnesium ratio. If you don't know what these ratios are and their significance, they are just the cellular effects of thyroid and adrenal hormones, respectively. This is not to say that eating carbs will, resolve his memory issues, resolve his low mood and blurry vision. But some carbs are helpful as part of the regimen to raise his metabolic rate. And raising the metabolic rate might very well resolve, some of the symptoms that he has had challenges with. So all in all, carbohydrates are useless if you want to be reductionistic, generalistic, and want to live in your echo chamber. For those who are open-minded and understand biochemical individuality, carbs are a good adjunct to help you optimize your energy and vitality depending on your metabolic rate. Thank you for your time, and signing off.